Yeah, so today there's been lots of talks on AI today. Hopefully what I'm going to speak about is a slightly different perspective. The first thing I'll say, obviously, it's a big subject. It's confusing and it's continually evolving. And I only have 15 minutes to cover quite a lot of information. So I'm going to try and keep this at 50,000 feet. And I also have a task of not going down rabbit holes, of which there are many. So I'll try, as I set out, to stick to the agenda. So the first thing that I just want to cover is there's been lots of talk today about artificial intelligence, AI. One of the frustrations that I have with this is that it's an all-encompassing description. It can cover everything and anything. But generally what we actually see behind what we call AI are things like large language models, which work on text processing and production, things such as generative AI, which are focused on creativity and content generation, things such as natural language processing, which are again which support such things as ChatGPT. So there can be a lot of confusion around that. And I'm going to contradict myself by saying we need better descriptions for this, and then say we should just refer to it to AI as AI because it's too confusing to refer to it as anything else. So with that in mind, we will just refer to AI for every other example that I give throughout the rest of the presentation. So this is a recent McKinsey report, 2023, and it looks at the adoption of different AI systems across the businesses. So I think the key things to call out here are actually the fact that no sector is not affected. And also that we see areas such as marketing and sales and product development, such as chatbots being the leading adopters within businesses. Just out of interest for the audience, by a show of hands, is anybody using AI in their business at the moment? Okay, quite a few, yeah. Probably about 7 hands that went up there for those of you that couldn't see. The rest of us just don't know that we're using it, right? I'm joking, yeah. So this slide is really just to show the fact that there is adoption within the business, within industry, and we're likely to just see this increase. And then this slide really just looks to show all of the different sectors and areas, again, that are being touched by AI. And so certainly for those that are still immature in some areas, whereas we see in health, it's much more advanced. In insurance, it's a lot more advanced. And again, when we go back to the description of what we mean by AI, we can go back to things such as, when we go back to general everyday uses of AI, we see that in banking for fraud identification, or we see that around processes to ensure customer retention and other bits and pieces. So there are some real use cases out there. Some of the other ones I think are a bit more subjective or immature, but the point that the slide is trying to reflect is I don't think there's going to be an area that isn't touched by this moving forward. So now that we've set the scene that AI applications as systems are going to be affecting businesses for whatever reasons that you're going to be adopting them, what do we need to think about? So data validation, when we're looking at AI systems, is really confirming the processes and the logic that it's actually using. And I'll go on to a few examples where that data validation hasn't been correct and has resulted in a bad outcome. And it's the same typical process that we've seen throughout the whole of the IT evolution of bad information in, bad information out. It's as simple as that. And then when we look at the risks that are the risk assessment that we need to do with this, it's really, for me, very similar to what we do today on a day-to-day basis. There's 3 kind of key principles that we continue to promote. One is to be informed. If you're informed, you understand what's in your environment, including the AI system. 2 is to make sure that You understand whether it's protected, whether it's vulnerable. And the last is to be prepared, okay, and be prepared for when things go wrong. What are the potential risks? Well, you can see those for yourselves. I think they affect all businesses. It's all relevant to your organization, but I don't think it significantly moves the dial in terms of what the impact will be for organizations. So what are we going to look at when we're looking at creating AI policies? Just again, as a show of hands, has anybody got AI policies that are in their businesses? 2, 3, okay. 4. Okay, 4, but I think there was more hands that showed that they were using AI in their business. So what we're looking at, I think you can read through those. I think the key points that I want to call out is the importance of executive engagement. It's really important, I think, within the business that executive engagement is there to understand what these new applications are going to mean to the business, why a new policy needs to be in place, and what does that mean for the business. And it also means a lot of education as well for the business, because a lot of people don't understand, certain departments, such as I was recently working with a customer and the HR department was looking at bringing in an application which had a backend part of, it was using an AI backend for some part of the processing. They weren't familiar with how that data was going to be handled, how that data was going to be stored, how that data was going to be controlled. And in fact, when we spoke to the provider couldn't provide us with any confidence around how that data was going to be managed as well. Now, I get that this is still relatively new for a lot of people, and this is why we're trying to encourage creating these policies, and we'll elaborate a bit more on some of the things that we need to do to make sure that the business is aligned with this. So where does this all start? It essentially has to start, well, actually, I'm going to say there's 2 positions here. There's a position that you might already be using back-end AI systems without knowing it. So there's a call that says possibly some kind of inventory to validate that that isn't the case. So at least you know you're starting from a relatively clean slate. And then the other part is to make sure that you've got that gate process so that when you're bringing in new systems today, that you can ask these questions. So I'm not sure if many of you, I suspect many organizations use third-party supplier forms. So what we're looking to do is just to amend the third-party supplier forms to capture whether there is any AI processing that happens on that business system. And then, of course, you've got your typical contractual agreements and due diligence as you would do for any system that you adopt. Again, when we're looking at integrating when we're looking to integrate the AI policies, it should just follow. It makes obvious sense that it should follow your current business processes. So many organizations will have a process for creating and delivering and educating the organization on new policies. So again, we suggest that you don't reinvent the wheel and follow those processes. So we'll just have a look at a couple of organizations that have got some good, more robust AI policies. So I think looking at these brands, you would expect this. So I'm not going to loiter on anything on here. The same on here on Salesforce and OpenAI again. So the purpose of this is you can actually go to their website and have a look at their policies on that. So that might give you some context and understanding around what a policy might look like. And then what we've seen with inadequate policies. So I'm sure you're familiar with the Cambridge Analytica incident that happened. I think most people are familiar with that. And then probably not so much with the Amazon incident where the AI tool was used for recruitment interviews and showed a bias against women. So again, when we were talking about that poor data in, poor data out, and that validation, this is an example of where that wasn't validated and was brought into production, and obviously you can see the consequences of it there. I'm just going to jump back, actually. There was just there's a couple of examples on here another example on here because it reflects some of the other conversations that we had today around contexts. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with the 2013 incident that happened when Associated Press Twitter account tweeted that the White House, there was an explosion at the White House and President Obama had been injured, and it caused the stock exchange to, I think it was 330 billion was lost on the stock exchange over the next 30 seconds. The point that keeps being reiterated today that I keep picking up is the fact that AI often doesn't have context, and that's just another example there of where it will follow the process and the impact of it can be significant. So I think, again, when we describe AI as this all-intelligent, all-encompassing thing, I think we should always just kind of bear that in mind. So practical steps for implementation. We've helped a couple of organizations with their AI policies recently. One of the things that actually came out was when people were looking to write their policies, they were referring specifically to things such as ChatGPT being AI. So writing, for example, that this is essentially a ChatGPT policy when it isn't. So what we ask and what we suggest and what we recommend is that you try and keep this as high level as possible by saying it's an AI policy because that's what everybody understands. Make sure that you've got the categories of all of the different machine learning types that sit underneath it, and then give some specific examples like ChatGPT so that it's really clear for everybody. And it also ensures that once you've written that policy once, anything that evolves and develops in the future, that policy will still be relevant and remain current. So when we look at some of the practical steps for implementation, again, I just reiterate, getting executive buy-in is really important because if you don't get the executive buy-in, you're not going to get this policy written out. Employee training is really important because this is new and it's new to the whole of the organization. And again, what we refer back to is those gate points of making sure that you're capturing at the right point when the organization is looking to engage with a service, whatever type of service that is, that uses a backend AI. I think that's all I had on there. And that concludes everything for me. I'll just leave you with 3 quick takeaways. So again, I reiterate, if you're looking to adopt an AI policy, make sure you've got that leadership support from the start. For those of you that are members of the IoTSF, we've got a CISO working group. And one of the first tasks that we're going to look to do is see how we can help the rest of the members in the group by creating some template AI policies and some template some educational material that can be shared amongst the members and businesses. If any of you want to be involved in that, please contact me or James or any of the team. We'd love to have you on board and help you contribute to that. The last thing that I'll note is that actually I am, although it may have sounded quite negative around AI, I am an adopter and supporter of that. This presentation was actually written by ChatGPT. So, thank you very much.